A few weeks ago, I studied the art fundamentals for an entire week, and one of the biggest issues with my artwork is my watercolor technique. If you don't know, I've been moving in the direction of having watercolor as my main medium. I used it a lot when I was younger, very early on in my art career, and I definitely didn't use it properly. So when I started using it not too long ago and I started trying to make full-fledged illustrations in watercolor, I experienced a lot of frustration. Those illustrations aren't bad, but they're just definitely not the way that I want to paint. I really need to focus on how to render and techniques and layering. There's just so much in watercolor painting that I just keep getting wrong. And I really want to focus on improving those skills. So in addition to continuing my studies in other areas, such as doing more figure drawing and practicing drawing animals and backgrounds and whatnot, I've decided that I need to practice my watercolor skills a lot more. I want to do a lot more paintings from references, so you guys are going to see a lot more of that throughout the rest of this year, since for the rest of the year I think I'm going to focus on growth in my art skills. So today I decided to sit down and do some watercolor portraits. I think it'll also give me a better understanding of how to paint my characters because, quite frankly, the faces, the heads, they are the worst part. Anatomy, for the rest of it aside, the faces that I illustrate, I don't even know how to paint them. And that's like the biggest issue with making a character the focal point. They need to be like the best looking part of the illustration. I have to work on learning how to paint faces and different facial features, among other things, but for now, I'm just going to do some portraits. So the first one that I did is pretty rough. It's not terrible. To be honest, it's a lot better than all of the portraits that I've done before. It doesn't have a whole lot of depth to it. I was forcing myself to focus on edges because my biggest issue when I try to illustrate a face is that I try to blend it out so much, and then a lot of times I will do like a wash over the top and it'll completely disturb the painting and end up making everything look super washed out. I've destroyed hours of rendering by doing these strange techniques. So I have been focusing a lot on trying to not blend everything, allowing the layers to be layers and allowing the watercolor to do its thing a bit more. So this first portrait was honestly not very good, but it taught me enough to where I think that I realized that I needed to completely change my approach. After I did this first portrait and I just wasn't happy with it, I think it's okay, but it just needs more, if that makes any sense. To be frank, I went into my next portrait expecting that it was just going to turn out terrible. The main issue I have with the mixing as you go method for painting skin is that I was worried that it wasn't going to look right, that it was going to look bizarre and unnatural, and that it wasn't going to be cohesive enough and it was just going to look like a mess. Those are ideas that I had based on a technique that I had never even tried. So I just kind of went for it and I just started grabbing really crazy colors, in my opinion, that were based on what I saw in the reference photo. So the next two portraits, they turn out really well, but I do crank up the saturation of the colors because I'm just focusing on what color I'm seeing and trying to pretend that it's not skin color, if that makes any sense. Instead of trying to think about it as skin, I'm just trying to think about it as what color looks most like the color in that area. Working on these last two portraits were like somersaults in my head. It was really difficult to retrain myself to think in this way. I think the second and the third portraits turn out really well. I honestly hated them while I was doing them the entire time. I always do this where I will be working on whatever I'm painting, and I will think that it just looks terrible and that it needs a lot more work. And I do this especially when I'm working from reference. My absolute favorite thing that I did with this technique was the hat on the second portrait. I think that it is the best thing that I've ever painted, and believe it or not, that was all in one layer. So I think that that's also another thing that I need to try to do more, is kind of approach it in like an alla prima kind of way, where I'm just like working it wet and wet, and once I've put down the layer, it's done. I have a really bad habit of just going over and over and over again with all layers of watercolor, and a lot of my illustrations look really overworked. Like the paintings that I did in that video where I studied the fundamentals for a week, those paintings are pretty rough because there were, I think one of them I just gave up on, and then the last one is way overworked. It's made me think that I need to try to take a step back sometimes and then just try to doing my best to paint everything in one layer. I think that's what I'm going to try to do from here on out. When I get too frustrated with my paintings and my illustrations, I will completely quit doing them. Like I will give up. Sometimes I will leave it out for myself to look at later, and when I come back I'll be like, oh, it's not that bad, I'll keep working on it. I've been working on it, but I'm not very good at breaking things up into multiple sessions. That's definitely something that I want to work on. For now, I'm just trying to be experimental and focus on improving as much as I can. I had a blast when I wasn't worried about the outcome of my artwork or the video. So I'm really excited. I am planning on doing the 100 heads challenge next month, and I wanted to do it all in watercolors so that I could really hone my watercolor skills. Today I decided to be spontaneous and just film the voiceover right after doing the painting. A lot of times I wait until I'm like really tired and will record the voiceovers, and I feel like I sound really upset and sad and whatever else, but I'm really just tired, and coming off of a high from this painting I think puts a lot more excitement in my voice, and it's a lot easier to feel excited talking about the things that I just made that are making me excited about making more art. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you enjoyed the artwork. I definitely did. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.